Hi. In our last video, we discussed monolithic versus distributed systems. What are monolithic systems and why we need distributed systems instead, and what the hardware limitations are for a monolithic system. So, if we recap, remember that the Amazon website running on one machine is bounded by its CPU, its random access memory, and its hard disk, right? In order for us to handle more capacity, we need to be able to scale out these individual characteristics of a machine separately. There are two ways to scale out. So the first way is vertical scaling. Vertical scaling just means getting a bigger machine. So instead of having a machine with, let's say, 4-core CPU, let's get an 8-core CPU instead, right? And if we're running out of memory, let's say if we currently have 100 megabytes of RAM, let's say we have 1 gigabyte of RAM, right? So we're spending money to get bigger machine. Now, what's the problem with this? The problem is if you have a hard disk, if you have a hard drive, and say you currently have 100 gigabytes and you want to scale out to 1 terabytes, if you already have written your data into this database, we need to make a replica. We need to essentially make a new replica. And this hard drive, so let's say if this is the old hard drive and this is the new hard drive, the new hard drive needs to copy from the old hard drive, and then once it's finished copying, it needs to discard the old hard drive. Of course, as the system is running, you're going to run into uh, conditions where you have stale data. So this is vertical scaling, where you are paying for a bigger machine, right? So this is how you scale a monolithic. You could scale out deployed distributed systems using vertical scaling too. But if you're running a monolithic application, unless if your application is stateless, you would have to scale out using the vertical scaling method. So here we have monolithic. Not sure why this is so large. So how do we scale out a distributed service? Well, we use something called horizontal scaling. Horizontal scaling is getting more machines instead of getting a bigger machine. Now let's take a look at what happens if we scale horizontally on a monolithic server, right? So say we have Amazon, single customer again, hitting our Amazon server, and this Amazon server still does request handling, compute, and storage, right? And we've reached a point where we now need, say, 2 machines. So we get a second machine. Amazon instance number 2, right? This is number 1. It also does request routing. So the customer can either hit this machine or can hit that machine, right? Now, both machine needs to have the same response, right? Because if Chris hits machine number 1 and machine number 2, right? Let's say Chris wants get item from both machines. Both machine needs to essentially return the same result, but they have separate storage. And so we need to synchronize the storage on both machines. So as we bring up machine 2 would need to read from machine 1 and copy all of the data over to its own hard drive. Once it finishes copying, it notifies the system that we are done copying, and you can use instance 2, right? But you can see here that there's a problem because any new modification come in, let's say Annie modifies the database by saying, let's do a modify request. It modifies the request, and the machine 1 now modifies its storage, and now machine 2 also needs to modify the storage. So you can see that there's a problem because now the database is out of sync. So you cannot really scale out monolithic services without breaking down its components. And once you break down its component, it becomes a distributed service. So you cannot horizontally scale a monolith. And that's why we need distributed services and microservices.